Welcome to Junkyard Theory, everybody. Tonight's guest is an Emmy Award-winning costume designer. He's worked on so many projects, so many cool projects that I'm going to run out of time. So I'm going to talk about, list them out one by one, but a few just for introduction's sake. Jurassic World, Mr. Harrigan's Phone, The Guilty, and also the upcoming Borderlands production, and everybody's favorite, Logan. Mr. Daniel Orlandi, thank you so much for joining us. Are you born?
Are you Bo1?
It's so good to have you on board the show, sir. I've been a massive fan of your work, everything you've done ever since Da Vinci Code. To I'm curious to see what you do with Borderlands, and I have so many questions. But how the audience perceives character and what the characters are wearing on screen counts a lot when it comes to their personality. It communicates an entirely separate visual image based on what your actors are wearing. So costume designers in that way are like the unsung heroes of, or when it comes to the fashion side of filmmaking. So before we actually come into costume design, I want to know a little bit more about you. Where do you come from? What's your origin story?
Wow. I grew up on the East Coast of the United States, very close to New York City. So as a kid, I went to New York and saw theater and always wanted to be a theater designer, sets and costumes and lighting. I went to theater school, mainly as a set designer, and worked doing off Broadway shows while I had my day job, and I went to theater school, and then I was working with some friends on public television programs, and we figured, hey, all of our friends in Los Angeles are working much more than us. So the three of us drove across the country, and they're still two of my very best friends. And we all immediately started working, and I got a job working for a costume designer almost immediately, and realized how much I loved working with actors. So I made the switch to costume design. So that's in a nutshell.
Wonderful. And your Instagram says you were a former truck driver. What was that switch
Oh,
to?
well, that was when I was in college. And
Gotcha.
I was going to design for a summer stock, which is, during the summer, they have these outdoor theaters. And at the last minute, the job fell through. The theater wasn't going to open that summer. So I had called a friend and said, uh-oh, I don't have a job. He said, well, come in. I'm working for this costume company and see what they have. And they said, well, the only job we have is truck driver. Can you drive a truck? And of course I said, yes, of course I can. But I couldn't. So that weekend we had borrowed a truck, and we, learned how to drive a truck. And I drove a truck one summer in Manhattan, and I killed no one. Maybe a few mailboxes, went over a lot of curbs, but figured it out. And it was actually a really fun job.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I mean, hey, Jim Cameron was a truck driver too, and look how he ended up.
Absolutely.
I have a feeling like, okay, truck driving might be like a very good precursor job to working in the film industry. So maybe, all you filmmakers out there, go drive a truck right now.
Well, it's amazing who you would meet. I met so many interesting people. So It was great. It was a great summer.
Wonderful. So you mentioned that you design costumes for theater. So coming from theater into filmmaking, cinema, how do the costumes, if at all, how do they change? Is there anything very specific there?
Well, it's different. Theatrical costumes are different than, I do a lot of movies about real people. So it's doing the research. And, when you're doing a film, it's like you also have to do the period uniforms. It's like, oh, we need a traffic cop in 1935. Oh, we need, a Mountie. So it's just a bigger job. There's hundreds or thousands of extras that you have to dress. So it's different.
Got you. Got you. And where do you usually start off with costumes when it comes to cinema? I mean, does it start from the screenplay? Do you look for any clues over there, or do you talk to the director and ask him what kind of look they need? What's your process of starting, like the starting process? What's that like?
It always starts with the script. You read the script, and if it's a period film or a film about a real person or real
Hmm.
time, you do the research, and then you can have the conversation with the director and offer your insight, and he'll tell you what he was thinking. And then you start working with the actors, making them feel like the character in the script. Uh, I've done a lot of movies about real people, and when you talk to the actor, they're not doing, the good ones, or they're not doing an impersonation of someone. They're inhabiting that character, and you might have to change it a bit from what the real person wore to what the actor playing that character would be. Uh, it's it's so many times I feel like I'm more of a psychologist than a costume designer. You're figuring out the character. Where would they buy their clothes? How, would their shoes be beat up? Are they sloppy? Are they neat? When they're going here, would they dress up? Are they nervous? Is their tie askew? I love all that stuff. So it's
Got
interesting.
you.
You give an actor something that makes them feel like the character, and it might be one little thing that no one sees, and it just makes them feel right.
So everything, including the texture or the fabric that you choose, almost always has a reasoning behind it.
Everything. I learned a lot early in my career. I worked with Robert De Niro, and I learned that every detail is important. I mean, we'd
Mm.
be doing a film, and in the morning, I'd go into his trailer, and he'd look at me and say, "Are these the socks that we chose?" And you'd be like, "Yes." And you'd think, "Okay," because it's a long, every actor is different, but it can be a process where every detail in the costume. I love to sometimes give actors something that nobody sees but makes them feel like the character or relates to another character. I did a film where we had flashbacks to when she was a little girl with her father. And the actress playing her as an adult, I gave her the ring that her father wore in all the flashback scenes. And it connected them, and it made her feel more connected to all the flashback scenes. So those kind of things that nobody noticed it in the movie, but she could feel it. Matter of fact, she never took it off.
So your intention when it comes to something like that is pretty much to help the actor inhabit the character and give as real or as authentic a performance as they can give, correct?
Yeah, because it's their performance.
Yeah.
Their performance. I'm there to support them and help them. If they have a suggestion, we'll try it. It might not work, but it's good to try.
And when it comes to actors and the suggestions that they give, how much of it do you actually take on board? Because you have the director who is actually above you, and maybe he has a different vision to what your actor is suggesting. How do you
Yes.
balance these two things out?
Well, it's a tricky situation sometimes. Sometimes they'll have the conversation privately, even about their character. But it's my job to make the actor and the director one and get on the same page. And it's a compromise. Everything's a compromise. I mean, I love working in film because there's so many. Uh, it's so collaborative. Everything's a collab. With the hair and makeup department, with the art department, with props, with the director, with the script, with the locations. So I love all of that. I love the discussions, and sometimes they're a little heated, but most of the time they're not.
Yeah. No, like you said, it is, in my humble opinion, it's the ultimate collaborative art form because you have artists from all across the spectrum coming in to serve this one ultimate god, which is the film. And
Yes.
it's so nice how everybody, ultimately gels together and ends up creating what no one person could have done alone. and like you said, you had to collaborate with various other departments. But talk to me specifically a bit more about sound, because that's not something that gets spoken about a lot, especially if you have lavalier mics and your costumes. They sometimes, you probably have to facilitate that from the get-go, from the design stage itself. Do you have these conversations with the director or the sound department?
Oh yeah, they're
Yeah.
sometimes they're very. It's like, oh, please don't put them in a silk shirt. It's going to make too much noise. I always laugh and say, okay, well, we'll cut the aluminum foil shirt, but you can wear a silk shirt. Uh, I start off, making the worst choice. They're going to have big bangling bracelets. To then, it's a compromise. So yeah, I can have fun with the sound department. Uh, it's always a little battle. I'll be like, oh, we'll tell them to unbutton one more because I want to put them like you tell them.
Yeah. It's never easy, right? Because those guys are also trying to do their job, but you also had to make sure that the costume is in place. So
Yeah,
yeah, like you said, compromise.
compromise. Absolutely.
Compromise.
Yeah. So
what's
yeah.
what Sorry, what's your favorite stage of it? Is it just the pre-production or also production? Because I'm guessing you're on stage for most productions when they actually happen as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I like all the different. I love the research at the beginning. I love the fitting process with the actors. But my favorite is the biggest days on the set when there's 1,000 extras to dress in period clothes. That makes me the happiest. These huge days where you get up at midnight and get to work. So at 6 a.m., everybody's dressed. The actors walk on set or wherever the location is, and 800 extras are there in your 1930s clothes, and it's fantastic. I love those days. It's all adrenaline and excitement.
What about the stress?
There's a lot of stress, but I try not to over stress about things because it's costumes. It's a movie.
Hmm.
I remember early in my career, we went to see a movie with my boss at the time, and I didn't like it. I said, "Oh, it just seemed fake," and he said, "It's a movie. It's already fake." So, I try not to stress too much. Some days, you just handle it. Things happen
Yeah.
on set. Something gets ripped. You know, someone's late, it's fine. It all works out. I mean, I think
Yeah.
about people that have real stress in their life.
That's true. We're not really saving lives or doing any rocket
Or
science.
being
Trying to entertain
bombed,
people.
or
Yeah.
yeah. So I think I'm pretty lucky.
Definitely. You mentioned, about putting detail into your work, and most of the time, general audiences don't really notice them. But
That's
the
fine.
more, yeah, talk to me a bit about that. You say it's fine, and like, what's the journey been like? Because I'm sure everybody would love for people to see the effort that you took to create not just one costume but a lot, and to hopefully figure out all the Easter eggs that you've laid along the way as well. But it's not something that happens all too often. So how do you kind of how do you deal with that?
Well, you know what? A lot of movies that I've done or projects that I've done, I don't want the costumes to get in the way of the story.
Hmm.
If it's distracting, uh, I don't want it to get in the way. I want them to be, for the most part, it depends on the film or the project. I like my costumes to just sort of blend in and be part of the story. You don't want to be distracted when someone comes into the scene. It's like, what does she got? Why does she have that hat on? Why, what's that color? So I try and make it as unobtrusive as possible.
Gotcha. And you've done a lot of period pieces as well.
Yes.
Besides the research and trying to stay as authentic to the period as possible, what creative liberties do you guys take?
Well, here's the thing, and I get into this argument a lot. You look at historic portraits, and that's what they think people look like,
Mm-hmm.
but that's them dressed up for a portrait. I use
Hmm.
the analogy of like the cover of Vogue magazine is not what you see someone walking down the street in.
So true.
You know, it's got to be real. This. And it's like, oh yeah, they would always have a hat on. No, if you're digging a ditch and you're bent down, your hat's going to fall off. So you doesn't have to have a hat on. When you're running for your lives, your tie doesn't have to be perfect. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I've gotten into those things with sometimes a historian will come on and and had this film and this historian came in and I was showing him the research. He said, well, that's 1830 and our project takes place in 1838. And I'm looking at him, I was like, you have a
Hmm.
jacket from the 70s on that's 50 years old.
Yeah.
Just shut up.
True. I read this thing up somewhere about, about the future that said, like, in 100 years, probably things will not be all that different. Like, chairs have been around since, like, what, thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And so have, t-shirts, all these costumes. They might change a little bit, but it's pretty much going to be the same for the most part.
It will. I just finished a project that I'm not allowed to talk about, but it's 100 years in the future. And then we had
Hmm.
some military. It's like, look at military uniforms 100 years ago. They don't look that different.
True.
They really don't. It's the same insignias. It's the same, colors. It's a jacket and pants. I mean, it's practical. I think you can have a deep discussion about where the future is going to go. We're not, it's not the Jetsons. And people are practical. Things have gotten more casual, easier. Technology changes, fabrics change. New fabrics are developed for comfort and ease, but basically, you can't beat a pair of pants.
That's so true. You mentioned practical. What's your take on functionality versus aesthetics?
I'm sorry.
What's your take on functionality with the costume versus the aesthetics?
Uh, I think functionality is quite important. Uh,
Hmm.
and it depends on who the person is or who the character is. You see, like at the Oscars, someone will wear a dress. It's like, and you're going to sit in that all night.
Hmm.
But if they're happy with it, that's fine. Uh, but then somebody, wants to be comfortable and have a good time. So
Yeah.
it's, I don't deal in fashion with people. I only, I'll be working on a film and somebody will say, oh, I'm going to a party. Will you help me figure out what I should wear? I'm like, well, tell me what your character is. Are you slutty girl? Are you a wallflower girl? What do you want to be? And then we'll figure it out. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I wear the same thing myself almost every day.
Yeah. The reason I asked that is actually because you worked on like a couple of superhero movies, and a common criticism that most actors say is, being in that costume is not comfortable at all. Like, I mean, it probably looks good, but it's not functional. You can't, go pee in that thing.
No.
There, you hear that also often. And you worked on X-Men Dark Phoenix and also Logan. Logan
Yes.
being, a completely different superhero movie where you don't really have costumes, like no spandex on, but Dark Phoenix was a different case.
Yeah.
So what were your experiences like with that?
Well, Logan, when I started on that film, there was some crazy concept art for the Reavers, the bad guys, that were
Hmm.
so kind of outrageous. And I looked at the director. I said, "Is this what you want?" He said, "Oh, no, 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 no." And because it didn't make any sense. They walk into a casino, and if they're dressed like that, wouldn't everybody sort of look at them and run away? And so we did it all from sort of army surplus, and even brought it down when they do scenes with in town. So it's all sort of they became more, we made it all much more grounded. And then when I did X-Men, the director wanted it very grounded. Matter of fact, the whole final battle, they're just in normal street clothes.
True.
We had one uniform, and he wanted it so plain. He wanted just a flight suit. So we made a flight suit, and we took from an old comic of X-Men the yellow X on the flight suit. But it was very, very simple. And at first, one of the actors was like, "Oh my God, I was expecting something, much more." And then, through the movie, they're like, "Oh my God, this is so much more comfortable."
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think actors would pretty much love to wear something that's way more comfortable than what
Well,
they
sometimes
are
they
used
don't.
to.
Sometimes they'd rather
Yeah,
be,
really.
look fancier. Even if, there are some actresses that will wear heels that are so uncomfortable and it just looks painful. And then there are some that you have no interest in that.
There is that argument as well. I mean, it's more of a criticism where you dress superheroines in heels, which is like such an uncomfortable piece of footwear to do action in. But it's kind of like it's been like a staple. It's kind of like a cliche, and that's, I guess, it's worked.
We got a lot of comments on Jurassic World.
I was gonna get that.
Our high heels. But here's the thing. In the script, she is this high-powered publicist walking them through, and then she goes, and it's like, where does she change her shoes? Does she have, I said, what if she's carrying a purse? What if they're in their purse? What if, and she was finally, Bryce was like, "I'm just wearing the high heels." And she wore the high heels doing all the action scenes. And they were, easy spirit kind of shoes, with rubber soles. And a lot of people comment on it, but of course I think about the Ginger Rogers Fred Astaire thing. It's like she did everything Fred did, only backwards and in heels.
So true.
So here's the thing. The director, when we started, he said, I want to see people dressed like both of them at Halloween. And we did. I mean, there are hundreds of pictures of women and men dressed as those two characters from that first Halloween after the film came out. So, and we wanted it to be sort of like old time movie heroes. I looked at like this movie called Magambo for Bryce's costume, and it's Ava Gardner in the jungle, all in white. And it looked great. We wanted it to be like a movie.
That is exactly what it felt. I know, and I was gonna ask you if you derived, any inspiration from the former Jurassic Park movies, but I mean, because it didn't necessarily seem like that. It felt like you guys started off on a clean slate with both of their costumes.
New characters. And Bryce's character is so different than anybody in the first one, because she's an executive. Thrust into this. And as the movie progresses, she loses layers and she becomes a much more heroic and stronger looking. And that's what we wanted. Her skirt rips, her top comes off. She's got her, and we see her arms, and she's, kind of in great shape. So she becomes more like a hero or heroine.
True. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the costumes also reflect the character arc that the actors kind of go through.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's when it really works well.
Yeah. We did this whole, we had a progression of like 40 changes. The costume changes 40 times.
So how many versions of the same costume do you guys end up creating? I mean,
A
for
lot,
the actors, for the stunt doubles.
a lot, a lot. Uh, and it's different on every film. But
Mm-hmm.
that one there were a lot because we had to age the tank tops, the shirts, the skirts. The skirts ripped a little, the skirts ripped a lot. The shirt is tied around her waist, so there was just so many. She gets dirtier, she gets wet. It was a lot.
Who keeps continuity? Script consultant?
And then
Or
also whoever is taking care of the actor.
gotcha.
So
Okay.
they take pictures of every scene at the end of at the beginning of the scene, at the end of the scene, because then when we continue, we have to go back to what it was at the beginning of the scene. But then when we continue, we have to go from what happened at the end of the scene. She runs down a hill, she trips. Now there's dirt on her knee, so
Yeah.
it all has to match. It's
How
quite.
many times? Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
I said it's quite complicated.
Complicated. Yeah. Yeah.
But
I can
usually the
imagine.
person that's taking care of them uh, does it with our ager dyer who's there, on the set, adding dirt,
Yeah.
subtracting dirt.
How many people have come up to you and asked you about, that specific scene of Bryce running away from the T-Rex in heels?
A lot of people. A lot of people. It's like, just get over it. It's a movie. And there was no place. Where does you wouldn't run barefoot, would you? Through the jungle?
No, not at all.
You wouldn't take your shoes off. So, there's the scene in that other movie where he cuts the heels off her shoes.
Mm-hmm.
What was that movie called? I can't remember. But we just didn't want to do that. It were so many discussions. Does she, in the back of the car, does she have a pair of flats? Does she have a pair of boots? Because originally the director definitely wanted her in a skirt,
Gotcha.
and she wanted to wear a skirt because it's that male female thing, and it's more about, I don't know. It's more about female empowerment. It's like, I can do everything you can do.
Yeah, I think there's that specific moment in that movie as well, where she takes the shirt off, the jacket off, ties it around her waist, and then goes wandering off in the forest. So, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed Jurassic World for what it was, and that whole progression with the costumes. It spoke a lot about the characters. So
Yeah, I
that was
think
a
so.
job well done.
And there were a lot of conversations about it. A
Mm.
lot of conversations.
So when it comes to dressing up like a whole lot of extras, how does what's your team like, and what do you expect from them? Like, talk to me a bit about that dynamic.
Well, it depends on the film. Some
Mhm.
films are small. I love the small films where I can go and dress all the extras in a bar scene in the 30s and really make a picture. And for me, that's really fun. But on a big show, even like Jurassic World, where we had uniforms, and all the people in the park, we had a great team. And then the period films, like Cinderella Man, where we have 800 people in the boxing arena in period clothes. It takes a big team. And then in the morning, as they're coming in, I might not dress everyone, but I check everyone.
Gotcha.
They file past, and my assistant and I will tie all the ties. On when we did the Alamo,
Mm.
it's probably the biggest costume movie I ever did. Uh, it was
Sorry, I lost you. Which one was that?
the Alamo,
Alamo.
was
Gotcha.
the
Yeah.
remake of the Alamo, where we had made 1,200, 1,400 Mexican army uniforms, and it was huge, and the weather was not our friend, so we had to dress the townspeople, the Mexican army, the defenders every day, because they didn't know what they were going to shoot depending on what the weather was going to be. So it would be us starting at 4 a.m., starting with the uniforms. And then my assistant would go dress the women and children, and I would go dress the stuntmen. And then someone else was dressing the wranglers, and then someone else was dressing, all, an hour away from each other, and all meet in the middle. It was crazy. But it was very rewarding. Even though the movie wasn't a success, I made some long-time connections with that director, and I think I've done now 7 movies with him since.
Wow. It's always nice to be able to collaborate with the same people over and over again, because it's kind of like you're growing with them. Like,
Yeah. You also
yeah.
have a shorthand about what, the director will say, this is what I want, da, 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 da. The rest you decide. Keep this actor happy, da, 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 da. This actor, with that same director, we did this movie Highwaymen with Kevin Costner, and the director said, all right, I'm telling you, Kevin Costner says if his hat from the 1930s isn't right, he can't play the part. Which, of course, I'm like, uh-oh. So we had all of these pictures of Kevin, at front, back, side, got those. Then all the research pictures of the real man and his hat, and then different styles of hat. And we went to this hat maker in Chicago who does beautiful hats, but they're quite expensive. And I said, this is what I want. This is the fabric of the suit. And he made this hat. But then I also had all of these other backup hats. And the hat that we had made in Chicago, they were there in the fitting. We were fitting in a hotel room. So there were about 12 hats on the bed. And Kevin put on that first hat that we had made in Chicago. And he said, this is the hat. Done. And I was like, oh, hallelujah.
Well, you guys got lucky there.
We got lucky there. But we had a lot of backups. I felt like we were covered.
Gotcha. It's always nice, when you're kind of working and you're in the dark on something, you're not sure whether the actor's going to like it or not, but then suddenly, it all comes together in the end. But sometimes I guess, dealing with egos is a whole other thing that you specifically might have to, which you obviously, encountered working directly with performers. So how do you navigate that?
You know what? I love working with actors. Because people say, oh, I could be an actor. It's like, no, you can't. Acting is really hard. I couldn't be an actor. So I'm there to support them. And I will say that most of the actors, almost all of the actors, especially the leading actors, have been great to work with. They're more concerned about the character. If you say, who are the actors that you hated working with? They're the actors that have 2 lines in the movie. And that's not, because they're just not good. They're way too vain, way too concerned about something that doesn't matter. It's about being part of the whole picture. And I think most actors, almost all the actors that I've worked with, are that way. It's about the script. It's about the character.
That's amazing. That's actually really nice to hear, because you read so much of these nightmare stories about what goes on set, and
I think I've been lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to listen. I mean, that's a big part of my job, is listening.
Talk to me a bit about that.
Well, you have to listen to what the actor is thinking, what the director is thinking, what the production designer is thinking, and try and make it all mesh. I don't have that big an ego. It's like, no, you must wear this dress. It's like, no, if you're uncomfortable with that, because I assisted other designers for a long time before I went out on my own, and I would see them make mistakes, and like, yeah, I wouldn't do that. And I learned from that. Every movie I learned something new. How to deal with people, how to deal with hair and makeup people, how to deal with a director, how to talk to a director. I like it. I'm very collaborative. I don't have that big an ego that if you say you don't like this tie, that I'm fine with a different tie.
That's really nice to hear because, like pretty much all the guests that I've had on the show have really echoed this sentiment that you can't really work on set with your ego because ultimately, you're serving the story, you're serving the director's vision.
Yes.
And
It's your
to
job sometimes to guide them the right way because they've
mm,
lost focus about it.
exactly.
Because I've had that discussion with the director, and it's like, well, the actor, make them wear that. I'm like, you know what? I can talk them into it, but do you want to talk them into it every day for 2 months?
Mm,
You just don't. And if it's that important to you, we'll do it. But it's better to make them feel comfortable because they're going to be much better in the scene. They're going to be, yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're gonna give they're gonna the more comfortable they feel, I guess they're gonna give a much better performance as well, which is what you need technically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Um, is there any skill from any other field, any other walk of life that you carried over, something that's been like a transferable skill when it comes to costume designing?
Well, you know what? I worked for a costume designer who then went into the fashion business.
Hmm.
And I became kind of good at selling clothes.
Selling
Uh,
clothes.
yeah, because he would do trunk shows, and you'd go to, and these rich ladies would come in, and
Uh-huh.
uh, and I became sort of famous for like making sometimes women wear the most inappropriate clothes. And be like, how could you, the guy I was working for would be like, he would be like, well, no, don't let them wear that dress. I'm like, no, that's a much more expensive dress. That's the one that they want, even though it is a little inappropriate for a woman of her age. This dress that you have is an old lady dress, and she doesn't want to be an old lady. And after the first trunk show, even the salespeople were like, "Oh, Daniel, you are shameless." I didn't do that in the movies, but I kind of really liked it. I hated the fashion business, but I liked doing those shows and talking, and making women feel comfortable in their clothes,
Mhm.
even if they weren't what people would think would be appropriate. So it was kind of fun.
In addition to being fun, I think that skill translated over to here into filmmaking, where you
Yeah,
had to like, I
yeah,
guess, woo people and
yeah.
stuff.
Be a cheerleader.
Exactly. That's a much better way of putting it. Yeah. That should be an entirely separate episode on a show. That would make for a good TV show, I guess.
Yeah, you know what would be great? Just talking to those women that sell expensive clothes in the stores.
Mm.
They're hilarious. I mean, I enjoyed those women and men that sold clothes, and it'd be like, oh my God, you really did that. I mean, I remember this saleswoman saying she was selling clothes to these rich Saudi women, and
Hmm.
one day she went in when they were in prayer. So everybody's, and she was like, "Oh, I'll come back," and the women were all on the ground. They're like, "No, no, come in. We'll just shop while we're praying." And she said, there I was lying on the floor, like pulling these dresses out. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'll take that one.
But while they were bent over on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my. That's hilarious. So we had a question from, I announced that you're coming on board the show, and we had a question regarding from the audience regarding Borderlands, which I know you're probably not allowed to talk too much
Yeah.
about because it's not released just yet. But did you look at the movie before you adapt? Sorry, did you look at the video game for inspiration to adapt the costumes? And if so, what was that process like?
Yes. I watched all of these YouTube videos of people playing the game.
The gameplays, yeah.
Yeah, which were really funny and I enjoyed. Yeah, so we I'm not allowed to talk too much about it because even a trailer hasn't been released yet. But it was
Yeah.
really I keep waiting. Uh it was really fun to work on. It's a wild movie. It's going to be a wild movie. It was a wild time. We shot in Budapest during the pandemic. Uh and
And
we had
knowing
all
Eli Roth,
this kind of
that I'm pretty sure it's like you said, it's crazy. I'm assuming there's a lot of violence in there too.
but it's Borderlands violence.
Yeah,
So
true, true, true.
I'd never done anything like that before. So we
Hmm.
had the best time.
Nice.
Yeah, I can't wait for people to see it. I heard like at one of the Comic Cons they showed a sizzle reel, but it was not released.
Hmm. No,
Uh
have not seen anything
no.
besides character posters, I think.
Yeah, and those are just silhouettes that actually Jamie Lee Curtis took those photos
What?
on set. Yeah.
No.
They're just silhouettes. They're,
Seriously?
yeah.
What can that woman not do?
She's amazing. She was great. Oh, and who knew that her father, Tony Curtis' family came from Budapest?
Really? Okay.
Yes. Yes, it was Hungarian. His father was Hungarian, and she came in all during COVID
Hmm.
and said, "Oh," she walked into the workroom where all our women were sewing and men, and she spoke a few words in Hungarian and said, "I'm so happy to be here. My father was here," and the whole room went wild.
Nice.
She's an amazing cheerleader and just so
Nice.
much fun to be around.
I can imagine because seeing her energy on all of these award shows in the
Yeah,
past few weeks, it's contagious.
it's contagious.
Yeah.
It's contagious. She's amazing. So it was really fun to work with her.
I hope we can get you back on board to talk about Borderlands once it's released, because
Yeah.
that would be a whole different experience as well. And I want to talk a little bit about the movie called The Guilty, which we had Donald Mowat on the show
Oh, uh-huh.
previously. We had
Oh,
him,
really?
yeah, and I mean, great guy. And
Yeah.
I think was that the first time you worked with him?
No. I did another movie. Oh my God, my mind. The Little Things.
The Little Things. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
We worked together, but we've known each other. Matter of fact, when I was in Budapest, he was in Budapest. So we got together and had dinner a few times.
Nice.
Uh, so yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah,
Uh, so The Guilty, was based on a Danish film,
Danish film. Yes.
uh, which I had seen, when they called me about doing it. It was way, it was before I'd even done Borderlands. And they said, here's this movie. And I thought, oh, it's a 10-minute drive from my house to the studio.
Hmm.
It's one actor, Jake Gyllenhaal, who I really respect and always wanted to work with. And then Antoine Fuqua, who's such a talented director. And I thought, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
It
So,
was what?
sorry, carry on.
It was great to work on. Oh, and here's a funny aside. When we went to Budapest, I'm meeting with Jamie Lee Curtis, and she said, "Is this your first film?" I said, "No, I did this teeny little film in Los Angeles uh, at the end of the year." And she said, "Was it The Guilty?" And I said, "Yeah." "How did you know?" She said, "Jake Gyllenhaal's my godson."
Oh, damn.
Small world.
Small world indeed.
So
Having Jamie Lee Curtis as your godmother, how cool is that?
yeah,
That's amazing. But on a movie like The Guilty, it's set in this one single location,
yes,
and people are wearing like very ordinary clothing. So for
very
something like that, talk to me a bit about the process. Like what are the what thinking goes into something of that sort? Because it
Well,
seems like you could just slap any off kind of office wear onto these characters, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot more, going on behind the scenes.
yeah, well, Jake's character, it's like it was a little complicated.
Hmm.
Um, I had some discussions with the director before I met Jake, uh, and they were very good discussions. And because here's the thing: it was some people on the film were like, "Well, he's going to trial tomorrow." It's like, no, he's not. It's a hearing, because if he was going to trial, he wouldn't be in this position the night before. He
Hmm.
he'd be taken off. He'd be off completely. So it's a hearing, and then it's like, well, he's in the call center and they have the logo. Should he have the logo on? Should he have part of his uniform? Should he just have his uniform on? So we it was a little complicated, and I wanted it to say as little as possible,
Hmm.
almost like a cipher.
Hmm.
And so it's just a plain polo shirt and he's wearing his police uniform pants. So it was a discussion about it was and it worked out, I think.
It did because until I just saw that you had worked on the movie The Guilty, like I never really, like you said, my attention was like never really drawn to what he was really wearing or all of that because it seemed to fit in like really well given that situation.
I
So
love
again,
doing those kind of movies. I love doing those kind of movies where it's about character
hmm,
and you don't want the costume to say too much. What? Most of the time I'm doing, especially a contemporary film, you don't want the costume to say too much. Let the actor act the part. Sometimes there'll be like a small character that comes in that you might want to telegraph a little more about the character in their costume,
hmm,
like the sleazy salesman. You might make him a little, so we immediately know it's a sleazy salesman. Uh, but I like the actor to play the part and make them feel, but I don't want, you didn't, because in The Guilty, this guy's kind of an asshole. Can I say that?
yeah,
Uh,
you can, you're good.
uh, but I didn't want the costume to say that. But
Hmm.
we wanted it to fit a little tight, like he's a little bit vain.
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
So it's form fitting and it's sort of the perfect polo shirt that fits the arm perfectly. It doesn't squeeze. It's not loose. Uh,
You did a fantastic job because
so I
it
love
gave
doing
that vibe off.
it's
Yeah,
little things.
it's the little things.
Yeah.
How much foreshadowing do you do with characters and their costumes, if at all? Have there been any examples that you could just draw from?
Well, here's the thing. I'll tell you another story. I did this movie uh, um, with Sandra Bullock, where
Hmm.
she's playing a real person. It was The Blind Side, where she plays this real woman. And Sandra, when I first talked to her, she said, "I want to look exactly like the woman. I want the same kind of clothes." And we had talked to the woman, Leanne, who's a force of nature, and she wears bright colors and patterns. And in the first fitting with Sandra Bullock, it's like, this doesn't work at all. It's makes it jokey. It makes your character jokey. It seems not right. So we took all the color out of her clothes. We took all the pattern out of her clothes. She's wearing white neutrals and navy blue, and then
Hmm.
the character worked. Whereas the bright patterns and everything would just be distracting, and it makes it made her character silly rather
Hmm.
than strong.
Imposing. Yeah,
So it was that thing, and I love doing that kind of stuff where you explore.
got you.
Yeah, early
Right.
on in my career with Robert De Niro, he'll try anything on. If you brought him in a clown costume, he'd put it on. Well, let's try it. And he'd say, yeah.
What is the most interesting project you worked on? Like so out of the box for you.
Well, you know what? The best thing about my job is it's always different.
Hmm.
I don't want to. I've been lucky in that I've done so many different kinds of movies, small movies, big movies. Certainly, Borderlands was out of the box. Uh, Certainly, Logan. When I got that job, I, you know, someone said, "Oh, wait, that's not your kind of movie.
Yeah.
No, that's why I did it.
You did not want to be typecast.
No, no. Sometimes you do. Certainly, actors get typecast. A lot
Yeah.
of costume designers get typecast. So
Yeah.
I've been lucky in that. But now it seems I'm doing a lot of movies with men, and
Hmm.
I had done a bunch of sort of girly movies before, and I haven't done a girl. So I'm hoping to get a girly movie at some point. I did this movie
Mr. Yeah.
called which was one of the most fun times I ever had, Down with Love, with Renee Zellweger and Ewan McGregor, and it's a homage to the Doris Day, Rock Hudson movies of the '60s, which were the first movies I ever saw as a kid, and it was so much fun to do because we made everything, and we wanted it to have that completely authentic, fake look of one of those
Mhm.
Doris Day movies where Ewan McGregor's vest matches the wall. Her
Yeah. Yeah.
fabric on her suit is the fabric of the couch, and it was so
Very,
much fun to do.
very outlandish, but you know it works within the context of that movie. It must have been like a full circle.
'60s, yeah, and we had stewardesses, and we made these crazy costumes for these showgirls, the astronauts, and we made them showgirl astronaut helmets, uh, and it was really, really fun. And I have to say, it's a movie that most fans of costume design, when I talk to them, they're like, "Oh, I love that movie." And it wasn't a big success at all, but it's really found a life with people watching it, and
Hmm.
so I'm proud of that film.
What about criticism? Because, it gets leveled at you no matter what you do, and you probably put in hours and hours of time, effort, sweat, blood, tears into it. But there's someone who comes along and just chucks a bit of mud at you, and it's
Yeah,
not easy. You gotta have thick skin.
yeah, you
How do
do.
you? Yeah.
Well, Joel Schumacher, who I worked with a few times,
Mm,
because nobody goes in to make a bad movie. Sometimes it just happens. Nobody starts a film and says, "Oh my God, we're going to make the worst movie ever."
yeah.
But it does happen. So it's easy to criticize. I mean, when I was younger, before I was you would criticize something in a movie like, "Oh, well, and now I can't because I think, well, who knows why that happened? At the
Mm.
last minute, they didn't have it. It's the actor said, "I'm not wearing that," something else, or put their own clothes on. So, yeah,
You
for
tend to
the,
empathize more and more with filmmakers.
so yeah, and criticism, it's easy to, and especially in the in age of this internet and online, anonymously, you can criticize everything. I go on this architectural website where they show houses, and people, criticize. Well, I hate that bathroom. It's like you don't have the $50 million to buy that bathroom, so really, it doesn't matter what you think of that bathroom.
Yeah, sometimes the internet has been amazing. Like, we are literally on opposite sides of the planet, and we're talking, but and it's made things like this possible, but also given a voice to the idiots too.
Yeah, but there's always been idiots. So
There's always been idiots, yeah. Uh, Before we wrap up, like, Mr. Harrigan's phone is actually on my list of stuff to watch next. So,
oh,
I,
cool.
I yeah, I haven't seen it. Seen it. You'll hear from me once I do
Okay.
watch it. But yeah, moving on into the future,
Uh-huh.
with streaming having been prominent during the age of the pandemic, and cinema kind of not. I'm not saying it's dissolving. It's making a comeback. People are going to the theaters more and more. But where do you see both this industry heading, and not just when it comes to costume design, but AI is making artificial intelligence. You see people making art using computers now, And in a way, I guess you could probably prompt the computer to generate so many samples of costumes for you as well. And how do you think all of these technological advancements are going to either elevate the industry or take away jobs? Like, there are so many ways you can look at it, but what's your take on it?
Well, I've been thinking about it because some people are worried about it.
Yeah.
I think that as long as there are actors and movie stars, they're going to need somebody to dress them and not digitally.
Hmm.
So, for a while, I think I'm okay. Um, I think there's, and I love theater, and I think people, I don't know, I like seeing movies in the theater. I was pretty good about seeing most of the films this year in the theater. At screenings or going to the movies. So I don't know. There's something about seeing a movie on a big screen with an audience that makes it so much better. You know, a shared experience. There are some films that you can see by yourself on your big TV, but yeah, it's like I never watch a movie on my computer. It's too small. My
Yeah.
eyes. But there's nothing like being in the theater, and I love live theater. So, uh, yeah. So I don't know about the AI thing. I mean, now we have when we're doing a superhero movie or something like that, we have these digital artists that concept artists, and you work with them and doing the
Yeah.
costume because they like those kind of digital costume designs. I like just drawing them myself. Borderlands, I drew a lot of them myself. Uh, and then we had one of those artists then do the photographic
Hmm.
renderings.
Yeah.
But matter of fact, I had done one of the characters, and then we had the digital artist do it, and the director was like, "No, I like yours. I want it to look like that." I'm like, "Oh, really cool." There's still something about hand drawing.
True, there is. And I really love looking at those very early sketches, in the art of the film kind of books. It's always amazing to see how things originated from. So, do you think we can see something like that for Borderlands?
There'll be a lot of art, digital art, I think,
Hmm.
and I think they have it all. But yeah, hopefully. I mean, it's going to be a wild movie, um, with this great cast. So
Yeah,
I'm excited to see it. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen anything except the dailies when we were shooting. So I'm excited to see it.
so are we.
Yeah.
And yeah, so actually, before we say goodbye, I mean, this has been an amazing session, so insightful, so enlightening. Where can people find more of you and your work online?
Oh, well, I have an Instagram account,
Hmm.
and it's Daniel OH, I think.
Yeah, OH, Landy.
Yeah, OH Orlandi. Yes. Uh, and yeah, I mean that's it. I don't have a website,
Uh,
but yeah, I love talking about costumes. I love talking about my work. Um, I never shut up. Uh, but
that's
yeah,
good.
so I'm always happy to have a job because I love what
Awesome.
I do. I feel very lucky. I feel very lucky. I go into a different world every time, and it's something new, and a subject that you think I'm not that interested in becomes, so interesting. When I did Ford versus Ferrari, it's like I knew nothing about car racing. Then all of a sudden,
Hmm.
I knew a lot. When we did Angels and Demons, the Catholic Church, the prop person, and I, and the production designer, we became experts in Catholic ritual. But 6 months later, I couldn't remember any of it.
That's kind of like a process of learning in school as well. You pass the exam and then you forget all about it.
Yeah, yeah. I was very good at test taking.
Any parting words to aspiring costume designers?
Yes, I found that my education, just general education, helped me in so many ways working in the film industry.
Hmm.
Uh, Whereas you know about history and you know about science, and you can have a conversation with a director or a producer or an actor. And I think a good basic general knowledge is, an education is so important. I mean, I thank my grammar school teachers. I was very lucky to go to a public school where we had art, and we had music, and we had language, and I feel that everyone deserves that. Every kid deserves that. So
Solid.
I would
Yeah.
say learn as much as you can, read everything you can. Information is good.
Very solid advice. Thank you so much, Daniel, for taking the time out to do this podcast
My
episode
pleasure. It
today.
was fun.
It was amazing, and
I hope to come to your country one day. I keep thinking I'll work there one day.
oh yeah, why not? Let's make it happen. Just cannot wait to see Borderlands and what you do next. So all the best with everything you do, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna hear more from you down the line. So till
Okay,
then,
great. It
yeah,
was so good to talk to you.
likewise. Till then, this is Junkyard Theory, folks.